She was given to the widowed Duke at 18, and what happened changed everything. Hello, dear reader. A warm welcome to this literary journey through time. Today I invite you to immerse yourself in the delicate pages of an era where love had to be won not with hasty words, but with silent gestures, glances that spoke more than entire speeches, and the patience of one who knows that the deepest bonds are woven thread by thread, like the lace that adorned the gowns of that distant time. This is the story of Lady Helena Ashford, a young woman who learned that to be chosen is more valuable than to be needed, that true love sometimes blossoms where we least expect it, and that the most beautiful strength lies not in shouts, but in the dignified silence of one who does not bow, even when the world insists on diminishing her. Imagine waking up one day to discover that your life has been sold like a commodity. Imagine being taken to a grand mansion, not as a beloved bride, but as a replacement for someone irreplaceable. Imagine 3 children who look at you as an intruder, a man who treats you like furniture, and an entire house that whispers the name of the woman you can never be. Now imagine finding strength where there was none, love where there was only emptiness, and discovering that sometimes the coldest contracts can turn into the warmest stories. This is Helena's journey, and perhaps deep down it is also a little bit of yours. And you, dear viewer, where are you watching from? What corner of the world brought you to this story? Leave the city that shelters you at this moment in the comments. And if this narrative touches your heart, don't forget, subscribe to the channel and leave that precious like. Every gesture from you helps me continue bringing these soul-warming stories. Year 1817, a spring spilling over England like an unfulfilled promise. Location: London Mayfair, the pulsating heart of the English aristocracy, where stone mansions held secrets older than their own foundations. The library of Thornbury House smelled of spilled brandy and poorly disguised shame. Lady Helena Ashford stood by the window, her gloved hands clasped over the mourning dress she had worn for 2 years, ever since her father fell at Waterloo, leaving her in the hands of an uncle who saw in her only monetary value like one appraising a mare at market. The fire in the hearth crackled. Outside, the London rain drummed against the window panes with that melancholic insistence that seemed to accompany all the crucial moments of her life. Helena watched the droplets run down the glass, drawing crooked paths, and thought that her own existence resembled those streams of water, always descending, with no control over its destiny. Behind her, male voices negotiated. Her life, she would soon discover, had a price, £15,000 and a smaller estate in Yorkshire. "The girl is well educated, Your Grace," said her uncle, Lord Edmund Ashford, with the ease of someone selling something in which he sees no true value. "She speaks French fluently, plays the pianoforte with delicacy, and understands what is expected of a duchess. Quiet, obedient. She will cause no embarrassment. Quiet." The word resonated in Helena like a funeral bell. Yes, she had learned to be quiet. Silence had been her refuge when her mother died, bringing her into the world, an original sin she had never managed to expiate. It had been her armor when her father left for the war and did not return. It had become her nature when her uncle took her in, not out of affection, but out of an obligation that creaked like a rusty hinge. "Lady Helena!" The voice reached her like a blade of ice. She turned slowly and for the first time looked at the man who had bought her future. Alexander Blackwood, Duke of Ravensworth, seemed carved from the same grey stone as his estates. 36 years that weighed like 60 on shoulders, stooped by a grief that knew no end. Black hair, slightly grey at the temples, eyes the colour of the sky before a storm, dark grey, turbulent, closed. There was a severe beauty about him, like that of ancient statues, admirable but utterly without warmth. He examined her, not as a man sees a woman, but as a buyer inspects merchandise. Helena felt his gaze slide over her worn dress, her face that no one had ever called beautiful, too delicate, too pale, lacking the bloom that society demanded. She saw when he noticed her hands, not those of a lady who had never worked, but slightly marked by the small chores her uncle considered appropriate for one who possessed no dowry. "This will be a marriage of convenience," the Duke declared, his voice devoid of any inflection that might suggest humanity. "You will care for the house and the children. I do not expect affection. I will not give it. Is that clear?" Helena lowered her eyes, not out of submission, but because something inside her refused to let him see the pain those words caused. She had not expected love, she was not that foolish, but to hear so crudely that she would be merely a titled employee, it was like being slapped in the face in a crowded room and having to smile and say thank you. "Yes, Your Grace," she replied, her voice low but firm. It did not tremble. She would not give him that satisfaction. Her uncle smiled, pleased. The deal was closed. Helena Ashford, at 18, had been sold as a solution to gambling debts and aristocratic necessity. She would be married in 3 days by special license, with no reading of the banns, no party, no joy. Just a transaction recorded on letterhead and witnessed by an indifferent God. When the Duke left, without a farewell, without a backward glance, Helena returned to the window. The rain was still falling. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and allowed herself, just for a moment, to imagine what it would be like if someone, someday, had chosen her not out of need, but out of a genuine desire for her presence. But it was a foolish dream, and Lady Helena Ashford had learned long ago not to dream. The ducal carriage traversed the muddy roads of Hertfordshire with the nauseating sway of a vehicle in no hurry, for its owner possessed all the time in the world. Inside, Helena sat on the burgundy velvet upholstery, hands clasped in her lap, her eyes fixed on the landscape gliding past the window, the greyish green of an English spring, dotted with sheep that looked like fallen clouds upon the fields. Across from her, Alexander Blackwood read his correspondence. He had not lifted his eyes once since they had left London, 4 hours earlier. The wedding had taken place that morning, a discreet ceremony in a side chapel with no flowers, no music, no one but the obligatory witnesses. Helena had worn a simple dress of light muslin, he a travelling suit. When the vicar pronounced the words that bound them until death did them part, she had felt the urge to laugh. Death would be a relief compared to the life that awaited her. The ring on her finger felt as heavy as a shackle. When Ravenswood Hall appeared on the horizon, Helena held her breath. Not because of its beauty, though it was beautiful in an imposing and almost threatening way. The Palladian mansion rose against the sky like a warning. You do not belong here. 60 windows stared at her like suspicious eyes. Side towers, formal gardens that stretched as far as the eye could see, a lake in the background reflecting the building like a cruel mirror. The carriage stopped. An army of servants materialized, 40, perhaps more, all in impeccable uniforms, their faces neutral, their eyes appraising the new Duchess with poorly disguised skepticism. "Your Grace," said an elderly butler, bowing stiffly. His tone was courteous, but there was ice beneath the politeness. "I am Jameson. Should you require anything, you must inform me." Helena nodded. She tried to smile, but felt the smile slip from her face like an ill-fitting mask. Alexander was already ascending the stairs, his broad back disappearing through the massive oak door. He did not wait for her. He did not offer his arm. He simply left. A middle-aged woman as severe as winter approached. A black dress, a ring of keys jingling at her waist, an expression of someone who had just sucked on a sour lemon. "Mrs. Hutchinson, housekeeper," she introduced herself without a curtsy. "I will conduct your Grace to your chambers. The children dine in the nursery. The Duke prefers not to be disturbed before dinner. The children." Helena felt something tighten in her chest. Yes, that was why she was here, wasn't it? To be a mother to children who already had a mother, dead, beloved, irreplaceable. She followed the housekeeper through endless corridors. The walls were covered with portraits of Blackwood ancestors, all with that same severe expression, as if judging the intruder who dared to tread upon their domain. But there was one portrait that was repeated, not an ancestor but a recent one. A woman of ethereal beauty, hair as golden as ripe wheat, eyes as blue as a summer sky, a gentle smile, a white silk dress, pearls around her neck, one hand resting delicately on the shoulder of a small child. "The late Duchess Isabel," Mrs. Hutchinson informed her, noticing Helena's gaze. There was reverence in her voice, almost adoration. "Daughter of the Marquis of Ashford, a renowned beauty throughout England, kind, refined, perfect. She passed 2 years ago, bringing little Charlotte into the world. A loss irreparable, irreparable." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Helena was led to the chambers that had belonged to Isabel. The door opened, and she felt as if she were entering a shrine. Everything remained untouched. A canopy bed of sky-blue velvet, a dressing table with ivory combs still arranged, as if their owner might return at any moment. The scent of French lavender suspended in the air like a perfumed ghost, and above the fireplace immense, dominating the portrait of Isabel. Larger than life, more real than reality itself. The blue eyes seemed to follow Helena as she crossed the room, judging, weighing, finding her wanting. "The Duke's chambers are through that door," Mrs. Hutchinson indicated, pointing to a side door. "Locked, naturally. His Grace will not—" a significant pause. "Disturb you." Helena understood. The marriage would not be consummated. She was a governess with a ring, nothing more. When she was finally alone, she collapsed into the chair by the dressing table. She stared at her own reflection next to Isabel's belongings and saw the cruel truth. She was a pale shadow, a poorly made copy, an inadequate replacement. That night, Lying in the bed that smelled of lavender and another woman's memories, Helena listened. Through the walls, the cry of a child, small, distressed, inconsolable. A female voice tried to soothe it, but the crying continued, a sharp knife tearing through the silence. Then footsteps, heavy, masculine, the nursery door opening, and then a low voice, hoarse with contained emotion singing in French, an old lullaby, sweet, desperate. Helena recognized the voice. Alexander, the Duke who showed no emotion, who had treated her like furniture, was singing to his daughter with a tenderness that was heartbreaking. And Helena understood with painful clarity she would never be loved in this house. She was surrounded by the ghosts of a love so great it had left no room for anything else. She was an intruder in a shrine, a substitute on an altar that did not want her. She turned on her side, facing the portrait of Isabel that also decorated that room, and for the first time since her father had died, she allowed herself to cry in silence, tears streaming down her temple, to wet the pillow that would never truly be hers. The days dragged on at Ravenswood Hall like a funeral procession. Helena would wake early, when the sun had barely begun to tinge the high windows with gold, and discover there was no clear purpose to her existence. She was the Duchess, a title that should open doors, but every door in this house seemed closed, locked not with keys, but with resentment and memory. Mrs. Hutchinson commanded the staff with an iron fist. When Helena timidly suggested changes to the menu or the arrangement of flowers in the hall, the housekeeper would smile, that polite smile that was really disguised contempt, and reply, "The late Duchess preferred it this way, Your Grace. The late Duchess." The phrase repeated like a ceaseless refrain. The late Duchess liked white roses, not yellow. The late Duchess played Chopin on the pianoforte every afternoon. The late Duchess embroidered the children's initials on their handkerchiefs. The late Duchess, the late Duchess, the late Duchess. Helena felt herself dissolving, becoming more transparent with each passing day, until she imagined that one day she would simply vanish and no one would notice. The children were an impregnable fortress. Lord William Blackwood at 10 was a perfect miniature of his father. Black hair, stormy eyes, shoulders already learning to carry the weight of being an heir. He wore his Eton uniform on weekends, preparing for the autumn when he would leave for boarding school. When Helena tried to speak with him, the boy would stare at her with an aristocratic disdain that seemed too old for his young face. "You are not our mother," he had said on the second night, with the casual cruelty of a child who does not understand the power of words. "You never will be." Lord Edward VII was a silent shadow, thin, pale, always with a book under his arm, hiding in corners of the library like a frightened animal. He did not speak to Helena, barely looked at her. He simply existed in his own private, inaccessible world. And Lady Charlotte, the 5-year-old girl, was an exact replica of Isabel. Golden curls, porcelain blue eyes, the delicacy of a wax doll. She always carried a French doll with the same name as her mother, Isabel. And she did not speak. Since her mother's death, not a single word had passed those rosy lips. Her mutism that doctors could not explain, which Miss Thornfield, the children's severe governess, fiercely protected. "The girl has suffered a trauma," Miss Thornfield had informed her, looking at Helena as if she were a contagious disease. "She needs stability, not changes," Helena tried. She would sit in the ladies' solar with her embroidery, just being present. She would walk through the gardens, watching from a distance as the children played under the governess's supervision. She left small gifts, a book of poems for Edward, a drawing of horses for William, a blue silk ribbon for Charlotte. Nothing was touched, nothing was acknowledged. And Alexander, the Duke, was an absent presence. He left before breakfast for the House of Lords, or to inspect his properties. He returned after dinner, locking himself in the library with brandy and documents. In the rare moments they sat at the table, she at one end, he at the other, separated by 20 feet of polished mahogany and emotional emptiness, they exchanged no words. Helena watched him sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking. There was pain in that severe face, a sadness so deep it seemed to have taken root in his soul. He was not just grieving, he was dead inside, living only out of obligation to his children and his title. One evening, weeks after her arrival, Helena dared to speak. "Your Grace, about the children, I thought perhaps we could—" "The children are well cared for by Miss Thornfield," he interrupted without lifting his eyes from his plate. "You need not concern yourself." "But I am," she swallowed, "I am the Duchess. I should—" "You are the Duchess," he agreed, now staring at her, and there was something in his grey eyes that made her shiver. "Not anger, emptiness. And you fulfill your duties by managing the house. The children already have everything they need. Except a mother, Helena thought, but she did not say it. She just nodded and returned to eating the stew that had no taste, in the house that had no warmth, next to the man who had no heart. That night, passing through the corridor that led to the nursery, she heard voices. She approached the ajar door, knowing she shouldn't, but unable to resist. "Why is she here, Papa?" William's voice confused hurt. "Because—" A long pause. Helena imagined Alexander searching for words. "Because everyone needs a mother, William. And your mother. She cannot come back. But we don't need that woman. We have Miss Thornfield. We have Grandmama Beatrice. We have you. It is not that simple, son. Do you love her?" A direct question, brutal in its childish honesty. Silence. Helena held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I loved your mother," Alexander said finally, his voice heavy with weight. "I loved her more than I thought it was possible to love. When she was gone, part of me went with her. I am not able—" He did not finish. He did not need to. Helena moved away silently, returning to the chambers that smelled of lavender and a ghost. She lay down in the bed, staring at the portrait of Isabel that watched her from above the fireplace, and whispered to the dead woman, "How could I ever compete with you? You were perfect. I am just a leftover." Isabel smiled in the portrait, sweet and unattainable, a dead queen who ruled even more powerfully than when she was alive. And Helena, for the first time, questioned whether she would survive this place. Not physically, but emotionally. She questioned whether a person could simply disappear from being unseen, dissolve from being unheard, cease to exist from not mattering. The clock on the bedside table struck midnight when she finally fell asleep, and she dreamed of abandoned gardens where nothing bloomed, no matter how much sun there was, because the earth refused to accept new seeds. It was in August, when the heat made the days languid and the nights endless, that Helena found the first note. It was in the music room, a chamber she avoided because the pianoforte there seemed like an altar to Isabel. Everyone spoke of how she played Chopin with angelic perfection, her fingers dancing over the keys like butterflies on flowers. Helena knew how to play as well, but in a mediocre fashion without genius. So she did not play. She did not dare profane that instrument with her mediocrity. But that afternoon, the loneliness weighed so heavily that she needed to be near something that suggested life. She entered, sat on the bench, her fingers hovering over the keys without touching them. It was then she saw it, a small folded piece of paper resting on the sheet music. Masculine handwriting, elegant, economical. Chopin, Nocturne Opus 9 No. 2. Charlotte likes this one. Helena picked up the paper, her heart quickening. She looked around. The room was empty. Who could have? In the following days, more notes appeared in unexpected places. In the library, inside a volume of poetry, Edward prefers Scott to Byron. Try Ivanhoe. In the garden, pinned to the stem of a white rose. White roses, William's favorite, though he'll never admit it. In the Ladies' Solar, Charlotte sews better when there is light from the east window. She sits there every afternoon at 3. Helena kept the notes like treasures. There was no signature, but she knew. She recognized the handwriting from the brief notes Alexander left for Jameson on estate matters. It was him. The Duke who did not speak to her was secretly helping her understand his children. Why? The question tormented her. Why not simply talk to her? Why this game of shadows? But Helena did not question it aloud. Instead, she began to follow the clues. She played the Chopin Nocturne in the music room one afternoon. She missed a few notes, but she continued. She did not notice at first the small golden-haired figure at the door, Charlotte hugging her doll, her eyes wide. The girl did not enter, but she stood there listening. And when Helena finished, a sad, melancholic piece full of longing, she saw that a tear was running down the girl's round cheek. Helena did not move. She did not speak. She just smiled gently and began to play again, slower this time, like a lullaby. Charlotte took one step inside, then another. When the music ended, the girl was beside the pianoforte, her small fingers touching the polished wood. Helena got off the bench, knelt to be at the child's height. "Did you like it?" she asked softly. Charlotte did not answer, but she nodded almost imperceptibly. "May I play for you again? Tomorrow?" Another nod. Tiny progress, but it was progress. With Edward, Helena left Ivanhoe on an armchair in the library, a bookmark on a specific page. The next day, the book had moved. Someone had read it. She left another, and another, a bridge of paper and ink. One afternoon, entering the library, she found Edward curled up in her favorite armchair, so absorbed in his reading that he did not hear her arrive. Helena took a book for herself, sat in the armchair beside him and read in silence. They remained like that for an hour. They did not speak, but they shared the space, and for Edward perhaps it was enough to know that she did not invade, but simply existed quiet and harmless. William was the most difficult fortress, but Helena noticed. The boy went to the stables every morning before his lessons. He loved horses with the passion of one who finds refuge in them. She began leaving flowers, white roses, at the door of his favorite horse's stall, Tempest, a black mare with a strong temperament. "Who is leaving these?" she heard William ask the stable boy one day. "I don't know, my lord. They were Mama's favorite." His voice was strange, confused. Helena watched from a distance, her heart aching. William took a rose, smelled it, and for an instant, just an instant, the man-child mask fell away, and he was just a sad child holding his dead mother's flower. The notes continued to appear. Little guides whispered directions through paper, and Helena began to understand. Alexander was not just cold. He was trapped. Trapped between the love for his children and his inability to move on. Between the desire for them to have a mother and the guilt of replacing Isabel. The notes were a compromise. He helped Helena but kept his distance. He would not risk his heart again. One evening, entering her chambers, Helena found something different. Not a note, but a book. Some thoughts concerning education by Locke. Bookmarks on specific pages, passages underlined. A guide, a silent gift. And on the first page, in the handwriting she was already growing to love without admitting it, a single line: "For the children, and for you. You both deserve patience." Helena hugged the book to her chest and for the first time since arriving at Ravenswood, felt something that was not despair. It was a small spark, as fragile as a candle flame in a draught, but it was hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance. Not to be loved. She did not expect that much. But to matter, to be seen, to exist, not as the shadow of a ghost, but as a person with her own worth. She looked at the portrait of Isabel above the fireplace. The dead woman seemed to watch her with less judgment now. Or perhaps Helena was just learning not to see herself as her enemy. "You loved them," Helena whispered to the portrait. "Let me love them too. In my own way. Not like you. Like me, please." The portrait did not answer. But that night, the scent of lavender seemed less oppressive, softer, almost comforting, and Helena fell asleep with the book under her pillow, dreaming for the first time of gardens where flowers bloomed, different from the old ones, but equally beautiful, each in its own time, each valid in its own existence. September arrived with that quality of light that precedes autumn, golden, melancholic, laden with promises the wind would soon carry away. Helena awoke on the morning of September 27th with a strange feeling, as if the air was electrically charged before a storm. It did not take long to find out why. The scream pierced Ravenswood Hall like a blade, sharp, terrified, inhuman. Miss Thornfield, always composed, always severe, was screaming in the nursery as if hell itself had opened up. Helena ran. She found Miss Thornfield at the door of Charlotte's room, her face as white as wax, her hands trembling. "Fever," she whispered. "A rash. God help us, it is the scarlet fever." The world stopped. Scarlet fever. The words echoed through the corridors, in the rooms, down the stairs like an avalanche. A disease that killed children, that decimated entire families, that did not distinguish between aristocrat and commoner. Helena entered the room. Charlotte was lying down, her golden hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. Her skin was burning, red blotches spreading across her neck and chest. The girl moaned softly, her eyes half closed, delirious. "Mama, Mama Isabel," she whispered. The first time she had spoken clearly since her mother's death, and it was to call for a ghost. Dr. Pembroke arrived in less than an hour, brought by a messenger who had ridden as if chased by demons. He examined Charlotte, his face growing darker and darker. "It is scarlet fever," he confirmed, taking off his spectacles and wiping them with a tired hand. "Highly contagious. The other boys must be isolated immediately. The entire house must—" "I will care for her," Helena said. Her voice was firm, without hesitation. Everyone stared at her. Miss Thornfield, Dr. Pembroke, Mrs. Hutchinson, who had appeared at the door, and Alexander, who had arrived just minutes before, still with road dust on his clothes. "Lady Ravensworth, you do not understand," the doctor began. "Scarlet fever is deadly. To care for the girl means exposing yourself." "I will care for her," Helena repeated. She looked at Alexander. The Duke was as pale as death, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. She saw absolute fear in those grey eyes, a fear she understood. Isabel had died of childbed fever. Fevers were the enemy he could not fight, the one that had stolen his beloved wife. And now his daughter. "Your Grace." Helena took a step forward, her voice low, just for him. "Let me do this for her. For you." "Helena." the first time he had called her by her name. The voice came out hoarse, broken. If something happens, nothing will happen. Trust me." He stared at her. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding, connection, recognition. Then Alexander nodded, brief, curt. "Do whatever is necessary, anything, the cost does not matter." Helena turned to Dr. Pembroke. "Bring me everything I need. I will lock myself in here with a maid to assist. No one else enters until the fever has passed." Thus began the longest vigil of her life. 3 days and 3 nights. 72 hours where time ceased to have meaning. Helena did not sleep. She applied cold compresses to Charlotte's burning skin, forced liquids between her dry lips, sang in French, the lullaby she had learned by hearing Alexander sing through the walls, the notes hesitant because Helena's French was not perfect, but it was sincere. The young, frightened maid assisted when necessary, but it was Helena who held Charlotte when the girl convulsed, who whispered words of comfort when delirium made her scream. Outside the door Alexander remained. Jameson brought a chair, but the Duke did not sit. He stood there, his back against the wall like a sentinel guarding the gates of hell. Mrs. Hutchinson brought trays he did not touch. William and Edward, quarantined in the East Wing, sent desperate notes he could not answer. On the second night Helena heard it. From the other side of the thick oak door, a muffled sound that chilled her blood. A man's weeping. Alexander Blackwood, Duke of Ravensworth, the man who showed no emotion, was crying like a child, sobs torn from the depths of his soul. Helena pressed her hand against the door. "Alexander," she called softly. "She will be fine, I promise." "She will not. I will not let her go." Silence. Then, "I cannot lose her. I cannot lose another—" His voice strangled. "Helena, please. Please save my daughter." "I will save her," she promised, tears streaming down her own face. "And then I will need you to come out of this darkness. For her, for all of them, they need their father, Alexander. Their living father, not the ghost you have become." There was no reply. But Helena felt through the door, through the walls, through all the weight of Ravenswood Hall, something change, something break, like ice cracking on a frozen river. On the third night, the longest, Charlotte worsened. The fever rose to dangerous levels. Dr. Pembroke, urgently summoned, examined her through the ajar door and shook his head. "Prepare yourself, Lady Ravensworth. The girl is— There is not much more we can do." Helena dismissed him with a sharp gesture. She returned to Charlotte, took her tiny hot hand and held it against her own heart. "Listen to me, Charlotte Isabel Blackwood," she said with a firm, clear, commanding voice. "You are the daughter of a duke and a duchess. You have the blood of warriors in your veins. Your mother gave you life, and life is a gift too precious to give up. Fight, my dear girl. Fight for your father who is dying on the other side of this door. Fight for your brothers who love you. Fight—" Her voice broke. "For me, because I love you, Charlotte. I love you as if I had carried you in my own womb, and I will not let you go. Do you hear me? I will not," she sang again. The French lullaby, her voice hoarse with exhaustion, but she did not stop. She sang until her throat ached, until her vocal cords scraped. She sang as if the music were a rope thrown to a drowning child. It was at dawn on the 4th day that it happened. The first golden rays of sun touched the nursery window, and Charlotte opened her eyes, no longer glazed with fever but lucid, focused. She stared at Helena with those porcelain blue eyes. "Mama, Helena," she whispered. Her voice was weak but clear, conscious. Helena sobbed. She took Charlotte in her arms, pressing her to her chest, tears wetting the girl's golden hair. "Thank God, oh thank God." She opened the door. Alexander was there, exactly where he had been for 3 days. His eyes were red, his beard unshaven, his clothes rumpled. When he saw Helena holding an awake Charlotte, his knees gave way, literally. The Duke of Ravensworth collapsed, falling to his knees in the marble corridor, covering his face with his hands, his body shaking with sobs he could no longer contain. "She is well," Helena said gently. "The fever has broken. She will need time to regain her strength, but she is well, Alexander." He lifted his face. Tears streamed unashamedly. He held out his arms and Helena placed Charlotte in them. Father and daughter embraced, and Alexander wept even more, kissing the girl's forehead repeatedly, whispering words of gratitude and love in French. Then he looked at Helena, and what she saw in those grey eyes made her heart stop. Gratitude, yes, but also something more, something new, fragile, dawning like a sprout after a winter too long. "You saved my daughter," he said. How can I thank you?" "You do not need to." Helena smiled, exhausted. "She is my daughter too now." Alexander stared at her, long piercingly. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes," he agreed, "she is." And in that corridor, bathed in the golden light of autumn, Something changed at Ravenswood Hall. The walls seemed to breathe differently. Isabel's portraits watched not with accusation, but with approval, recognition. Miss Thornfield resigned the next day. She could not accept that that woman had so completely replaced the late Duchess. Helena accepted the resignation with grace, without rancor. Because Helena Ashford Blackwood had learned something precious during those 3 days of vigil, she was stronger than she had imagined. She was a mother not because she had given birth, but because she had chosen to love. She was a duchess, not because a contract said so, but because she had earned her place with courage and selflessness. And perhaps, just perhaps, one day she would also be a true wife. But for now it was enough to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be finally not the shadow of a ghost, but a person in her own light. October painted Ravenswood in colors of fire. The trees in the park turned into living torches, gold, red, amber, and the entire estate seemed to breathe differently, as if awakening from a lethargic sleep. The children changed first. William came to Helena's room one morning, knocking on the door with a formality that didn't suit his 10 years. When she opened it, she found him there as stiff as a soldier, but his eyes, so like his father's, were soft for the first time. "Lady Ravensworth," he began, his voice too solemn for a boy. Then he knelt, a dramatic and aristocratic gesture, entirely out of place for a domestic situation. "I beg your pardon for the discourtesy with which I have treated you. You saved my sister. You acted with greater courage than any knight I have ever read about. You have my loyalty. You have," he swallowed, "you have my respect and also my affection, if you would permit me to call you Mama Helena." Helena felt tears burn her eyes. She knelt too, bringing herself to his level, and took his face in her hands. "William," she said softly, "you do not need to kneel to me, ever. You are the heir and you will be a great man. But you're also a boy who lost his mother too soon and had to pretend to be strong. You do not need to pretend with me. You can just be." The boy broke down. He threw himself into her arms and cried, as he had not cried since Isabel died. He cried for his lost mother, for the weight of being an heir, for the anger he had carried, for the guilt of starting to like Helena when he felt it betrayed Isabel. Helena held him, rocked him, sang softly, and when he finally calmed down, she wiped his tears with her own handkerchief and smiled. "You can love your mother Isabel and love me too," she said gently. "Love is not a betrayal. It is an expansion. Your heart is big enough for both, I promise." William nodded, clung to her for another moment, then straightened his shoulders, regaining his composure. But now, when he looked at Helena, there was light in his eyes. Warmth. Edward was more subtle. There was no grand declaration. But one afternoon, while reading in the library, Helena felt a presence beside her. She looked up and saw Edward there with a pile of books, looking at her shyly. May I sit here?" he asked. "Of course, my dear." He sat. They remained in comfortable silence for a long time. "Then thank you," said Edward, so low she almost didn't hear, "for not giving up on Charlotte, for not giving up on us." Helena held out her hand. Edward hesitated, then took it, small cold fingers, holding hers with surprising strength. "I would never give up on you," she promised. Never. And Charlotte, the girl was Helena's constant shadow now. She followed her everywhere, her small hand always seeking Helena's, her finally freed voice chattering about everything and nothing. The doll named Isabel was still a constant companion, but now Charlotte also carried a new doll Helena had given her, one with brown hair and a simple dress. "This is Mama Helena doll," Charlotte would explain to anyone who would listen. "Mama Isabel is in heaven, but Mama Helena is here. I have two mamas. I am lucky." Yes, Helena thought, her heart tight with emotion. Lucky. The staff changed too. Mrs. Hutchinson, who had been pure ice, began to smile. Small smiles, but genuine. She started consulting Helena on domestic decisions, no longer invoking the late Duchess as the supreme authority. Mr. Jameson now treated Helena with deep respect. One morning, while bringing a tea tray, he stopped, bowed formally, and said, "It is an honor to serve your grace. The house is alive again." The maids whispered less. The stable boys waved when she passed. The head butler himself, an austere figure Helena thought incapable of emotion, discreetly wiped his eyes when he saw the three children hugging Helena in the garden, laughing. But the most profound change was in Alexander. The Duke was still a man of few words, but now when he arrived for dinner, he would look at Helena. Really look, not through her, not past her, but at her. He would ask about her day. He would listen to the stories about the children's antics with something that might be a smile playing on his lips. And the notes continued. But now they were different. "The roses in the south garden are blooming. I thought you might like to see them. I have ordered new Chopin sheet music for you. Thank you. For everything." I cannot say it in person, but you need to know you have changed everything. Helena treasured every word. One afternoon, going to the private chapel at Ravenswood, a small chapel where the Blackwoods married, baptized, and were buried, she found Isabel's memorial, a marble altar, her name engraved in golden letters, always fresh white roses. Helena knelt. She looked at the name of the woman she had never met, but whose presence had shaped so much of her life. Isabel, she whispered. I do not know if you can hear me. I do not know if you care, but thank you. Thank you for loving them so well. Thank you for giving them a foundation of love that sustained them even in your absence. Thank you for Charlotte, Edward, William. They are extraordinary. You did well. A pause. Tears streaming. I will never try to replace you. I cannot. I do not want to, but I will love them. I will protect them. I will do everything in my power to honor what you began. I promise. She placed fresh white roses on the memorial. She stood up, wiped her tears, and she did not realize that William was watching from the chapel door. She did not hear him leave and run to tell Edward. She honors Mama's memory. She doesn't try to erase it. She understands. She is worthy of us. That night at dinner, for the first time since Helena had arrived at Ravenswood, the children dined in the main dining room, not in the nursery but with the adults. Alexander's decision, surprising and symbolic. William sat to Helena's right, Edward to her left. Charlotte insisted on sitting in her lap, refusing her own chair. Alexander, at the head of the table, observed the scene with an expression Helena could not quite decipher. But there was softness there. There was something thawing. As they ate, conversation flowing naturally, occasional laughter, William telling a story about Edward's mischief, Charlotte showing off a new drawing. Helena felt something she hadn't felt since before her father's death. Belonging. She belonged here, not as a substitute, not as an employee, as part of the family. When her eyes met Alexander's, he raised his wineglass slightly, a silent toast and acknowledgement, and Helena smiled. But the peace was still fragile, and the ghosts, though retreating, had not vanished completely. London society had not yet accepted Helena. The title of Duchess was hers legally, but socially, there were doubts, gossip, mistrust, and that would become a problem very soon. The Dowager Duchess Beatrice of Ravensworth arrived at Ravenswood Hall in October like a typhoon dressed in black silk. At 58, Alexander's mother-in-law and the mother of his late wife, she was a force of nature, haughty, imperious, accustomed to immediate obedience. She entered the main hall unannounced, her cane tapping on the marble like a decree, her sharp eyes scanning the house for changes she could criticize. Helena was in the ladies' solo with Charlotte when Mrs. Hutchinson appeared, pale. "Your Grace!" "The Dowager has arrived." Helena's stomach tightened. She had met her mother-in-law only once, weeks after the wedding, and it had been a frosty encounter. Beatrice had made it clear that she considered Helena an inadequate usurper of her beloved daughter Isabel's place. She descended the stairs, adjusting her simple muslin dress, praying to appear confident when she felt anything but. Beatrice was in the blue drawing room, Alexander already present. When Helena entered, the Dowager examined her from head to toe, her expression that of someone sucking on a sour lemon. "Lady Ravensworth," she said, her tone icy. She did not even use her first name. "Still here, I see." "This is my home, Your Grace," Helena replied softly, but without lowering her eyes. "My daughter's home," Beatrice corrected sharply. "Walls she loved, furniture she chose, air she breathed. You are a temporary occupant." "Mother," Alexander intervened, his voice a warning. "Helena is my wife. She deserves respect." "Wife?" Beatrice laughed, a bitter sound. "She is a business arrangement. Everyone knows it. Bought to care for the children, because you could not find a suitable match after Isabel. Do not insult her by calling her a wife in the true sense of the word." Helena felt as if she had been slapped, but she maintained her composure, her spine straight, her hands calmly clasped. "The children are well," she said, changing the subject with dignity. "Charlotte has fully recovered from the fever. William and Edward are healthy. They will all want to see you, I am sure." "Ah, yes," Beatrice smiled, but it held no warmth. "I heard you cared for Charlotte during the scarlet fever. Very convenient, a domestic heroine. You have certainly earned your place, have you not?" "She saved Charlotte," Alexander said harshly. "She risked her own life. If that does not deserve gratitude—" "Oh, it deserves gratitude, certainly," Beatrice interrupted. "And that is why I am here, to ensure that gratitude is properly demonstrated. You must present Lady Ravensworth to society properly, Alexander. She is the Duchess of Ravensworth, for better or worse. She cannot remain hidden in the country like a shameful secret." Alexander frowned. "A ball?" The Ravensworth Autumn Ball, a tradition. It has not been held for the past 2 years due to mourning. But now there is a new Duchess. Society expects a formal presentation, October the 15th. I will send the invitations myself. Helena felt panic rise. A ball, society. 300 people judging her every move, comparing her to Isabel, finding her wanting. It is not necessary, she began. It is absolutely necessary, Beatrice cut in. Unless you wish for everyone to continue whispering that you are a glorified mistress or a promoted governess. Choose, Lady Ravensworth. And so Helena found herself trapped in a snare she could not escape. The preparations consumed the next 2 weeks. Dressmakers came from London. Servants cleaned the ballroom that had remained closed since Isabel's death. Invitations on cream paper with the Ravensworth crest were sent to 300 high society families. Helena tried to learn the proper dances. They hired a dance master who made her repeat the steps until her feet ached. Alexander, surprisingly, danced with her a few times during rehearsals. It was strange to be in his arms, to feel his firm hand on her waist, to move to the rhythm of the waltz. He did not speak during the dances, but he looked at her with an expression Helena could not decipher. You dance well, he said once when they finished. I lie well, Helena corrected. I am terrified. Alexander stopped. He stared at her. Why? Because, how to explain? Because they will compare me to her. And I will lose. I always lose. Helena, no, it is true. Isabel was perfect. I am an ordinary, adequate at best. They will see it. They will whisper. They will judge me. Alexander took a step forward. He was so close Helena could feel his warmth, smell the scent of leather and spice that always accompanied him. You are not ordinary, he said quietly. You are different. Not better, not worse, different, and there is value in that. Before Helena could respond, he stepped away, leaving her alone in the empty ballroom, her heart beating fast. The night of the ball arrived inevitably. Helena was in the ducal chambers, Marie helping her dress. The gown was a masterpiece, sapphire blue silk that made her eyes look deeper, a modest but elegant neckline, white gloves to the elbows. The Ravensworth diamonds, a full parure, necklace, earrings, tiara, sparkled against her pale skin. When she looked in the mirror, Helena barely recognized herself. She looked like a real duchess, but inside she was still the orphan girl who had been sold like cattle. She descended the stairs. The ballroom was already full, 300 people in their finest attire, jewels catching the light of 1,000 candles, laughter and conversation creating a constant buzz. Everyone stopped when she entered. Everyone stared, assessed. Helena saw it on their faces. Surprise, curiosity, poorly disguised disdain. She heard the whispers. So that is the new Duchess. Quite different from Isabel, isn't she? They bought her, you know. Alexander materialized beside her, offering his arm. He looked magnificent in formal attire, a perfect white cravat, the ducal decoration on his chest. Breathe, he whispered. You belong here as much as any of them. They opened the ball with a waltz. Helena concentrated on not tripping, on following the steps, on smiling when appropriate. Alexander led her firmly, and in his arms she felt safe, almost. But when the music ended and others invited her to dance, the safety vanished. She made small mistakes. She laughed when she should have smiled discreetly. She spoke about books with enthusiasm when she should have been reserved. She showed intelligence when she should have feigned ignorance. And Lady Pemberton, a tall, beautiful, cruel woman who everyone said had been a previous suitor of Alexander's, was watching everything. Helena was on the terrace getting some air when she heard it. Lady Pemberton and her friends, just behind the heavy curtains, not realizing someone could hear. Well, Ravensworth always had excellent taste, Lady Pemberton was saying, her voice laced with venom. Isabel was a rare flower. This one is a product of necessity, not choice. Bought to care for children, nothing more. Poor Alexander. I imagine he closes his eyes and pretends it's Isabel when he must. Perform his marital duties. Laughter. Cruel sharp. Helena felt her blood run cold. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But she stood paralyzed, her hands gripping the terrace balustrade until her knuckles turned white. Mama Helena! The childish voice cut through the venom. William crossed the ballroom. He was present as the heir, being introduced to aristocratic society. He approached Lady Pemberton, with all the authority of the Viscount of Ashmore, the future Duke. Lady Pemberton, he said, his voice clear enough for half the ballroom to hear. Your ladyship forgets you are speaking of the Duchess of Ravensworth, my mother. I suggest more respect. The entire ballroom fell silent. Lady Pemberton paled, then flushed red with embarrassment and anger. How dare you? How dare I defend my mother? William lifted his chin. Easily. She saved my sister. She loved us when we rejected her. She is more noble than half the people in this room, including your ladyship. Alexander appeared, his face like a storm. William, go to your room. But Papa, now. The boy went, but not before looking at Helena with an expression of apology. She nodded gently, grateful. Alexander turned to Lady Pemberton. The entire ballroom was watching now. My wife is the Duchess of Ravensworth, he said, his voice icy, cutting. If you cannot respect her, Lady Pemberton, you are not welcome in my house. Good evening. It was not a suggestion. It was an expulsion. Lady Pemberton, publicly humiliated, had no choice but to withdraw, her retinue of friends following her like a sinking ship. But the damage was done. Helena felt the stares, heard the whispers starting again. Some admired Alexander for defending his wife. Others judged her for causing a scandal. Still others simply confirmed their suspicions. She was indeed an inadequate purchase for the ducal title. Helena smiled. She finished the night with grace, danced when asked, conversed when appropriate. But when she finally managed to return to her chambers, at 3 in the morning, she broke down. She tore off the silk gown, the sparkling diamonds, the Duchess mask. She sat on the floor, still in her corset and petticoats, and cried. She cried for the humiliation, for the cruel words, for the realization that no matter what she did, it would never be enough. That's when she heard it. Male voices on the terrace below her window. She recognized one, Alexander's. The other was his friend, Lord Ashford. Helena didn't want to eavesdrop, but she couldn't help it. She approached the window, hiding behind the curtains. Alexander, the new Duchess is charming, Lord Ashford was saying. Different from Isabel, certainly, but she has a light of her own. It was a practical arrangement, James, Alexander replied, his voice tired. Helena held her breath. I needed a mother for the children, someone to manage the house, nothing more. It was not a matter of affection. A pause. Helena's heart shattered. Isabel was my great love, the only one. I cannot replace her. It is not fair to Helena to expect that of her. She fulfills her role, fulfills it well. But I cannot love her as I loved Isabel. I am not able. Helena moved away from the window. She felt as if she had been stabbed in the chest. It all made sense now. The kind notes, the public defense, they were duty. Gratitude, not love. It would never be love. She was an employee. Glorified, respected, but an employee. And Helena understood with brutal clarity. She could not go on like this. She could not live as a ghost in a haunted house, loving a man who would never love her back, caring for children who would always see another woman as their true mother. She had to leave, before her heart shattered completely. Helena did not sleep. She sat in the chair by the window, watching the sky change from deep black to pre-dawn grey, then to soft pink. Every minute was an eternity of pain. When the sun finally rose, she had already decided. She could not remain at Ravenswood. Not as an unwanted guest, not as an unloved wife, not as a borrowed mother. There was a limit to how much a soul could endure, and Helena had reached hers. She wrote the letter with a surprisingly steady hand. Your Grace, I beg your pardon for this sudden decision, but I have come to understand something essential. I cannot continue as a mere domestic convenience. I deserve respect, if not love. I deserve to be chosen, not just needed. An unconsummated marriage can be annulled by ecclesiastical authority. I will seek refuge at the convent of the Sisters of Mercy in Sussex, where I will request an annulment. This will free your Grace to find a wife who can truly take Isabel's place or simply remain faithful to her memory, as you wish. The children have been informed. I explained that sometimes people must leave, but it does not diminish love. William understood, I believe. Edward cried. Charlotte does not yet understand, but they will in time. Thank you for your hospitality, for the kindness you showed, for the secret notes that made my stay bearable. I wish you happiness, Alexander. Truly, Helena. She left the letter on the desk. Beside it, she placed the ducal ring, a symbol of a marriage that was never real, and her mother's pearl necklace, the only personal possession she had. She dressed simply, a grey travelling dress, a modest cloak, a plain hat. She looked like a governess, not a duchess. Perhaps she always had been. She descended the stairs while the house still slept. Only one servant was awake, preparing the fireplaces. He saw her confused, but Helena walked straight past. She walked to the village, 2 miles of dusty road. She took the public coach that left at 8 in the morning. Destination Sussex, the convent of the Sisters of Mercy. She did not look back, but tears streamed down her face. As the coach pulled away from Ravenswood Hall, carrying her away from the only place where, for a brief moment, she had felt at home. It was almost 3 in the afternoon when William burst into his father's study. He did not knock. He simply stormed in, his face pale, a crumpled paper in his hand. "Papa, she is gone. Mama Helena is gone." Alexander looked up from his documents. He did not understand immediately. "What do you mean, gone?" "Her room is empty. Her clothes are gone. She left this." He handed him the letter. Alexander read it. "Read it again." The blood froze in his veins. "I cannot continue as a mere domestic convenience. I deserve respect, if not love." Annulment. Good God, what had he done? "Where is she?" He stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. "We do not know. Jameson said she left early this morning. On foot." Edward and Charlotte appeared at the door, both crying. "Papa, bring Mama Helena back," pleaded Charlotte, tears streaming down her rosy cheeks. She promised she wouldn't leave like the other mama. She promised. Alexander felt as if he had been punched in the gut. He had done this. With his cruel words on the terrace, with his inability to admit what he truly felt, with his cowardice, Helena had heard. She had heard him deny what she meant to him. And she had believed it, because he had been convincing in his lie, because he had even lied to himself. "Jameson!" he shouted. The butler appeared in seconds. "Tempest now and find out which public coach left this morning." "I have already inquired, Your Grace. There was only one. Destination Sussex." "Sussex." "The convent." Alexander ran to the stables, to Tempest, his fastest mare, and mounted without even waiting for a proper saddle. "I will bring her back," he said to his children, who watched from the door. "I promise. I will bring her back." And he rode. He rode as he had never ridden before. 25 miles across fields, roads, villages. Tempest galloped, foam at her flanks, but Alexander did not stop. He could not stop, because he had to reach her, before it was too late, before she knocked on that iron gate and disappeared into a cloistered life, lost to him forever. He needed to tell her the truth he had not admitted even to himself until she left. He loved her, not as he had loved Isabel. That love had been an intense, consuming, perfect fire, a love of youth, of firsts, of discoveries. But Helena was different. She was the sunrise after a night too long. She was breathing fresh air after suffocating. She was slowly waking from a nightmare and discovering that reality could be gentle too. He didn't realize when it had happened. Perhaps in the secret notes he wrote, an excuse to connect without risk. Perhaps when she cared for Charlotte, proving a courage greater than any general's. Perhaps in the small moments, seeing her smile at Edward, hearing her sing to Charlotte, watching her endure Lady Pemberton's cruelty with quiet dignity. Or perhaps he had always known and had just denied it out of fear. Fear of betraying Isabel, fear of loving again and losing, fear of admitting that the heart could expand, not replace. But now, riding desperately, Alexander understood. Love was not a betrayal. It was an honor. Honoring Isabel meant living fully, not withering away. It meant embracing joy again, not imprisoning himself in an emotional mausoleum. And Helena deserved to be loved, not as a second choice, not as a practical solution. As her unique, special Helena. The sun was setting when the convent of the Sisters of Mercy appeared on the horizon. A grey stone building, high walls, an iron gate, and sitting on a stone bench before the gate, apparently unable to ring the bell, Helena. Alexander dismounted before Tempest had fully stopped. He stumbled, recovered, and approached. Helena turned at the sound of his footsteps. She saw him. Her eyes, those brown eyes he had learned to love, widened, then filled with tears. "Alexander," she whispered. He fell to his knees, literally. There, on the stone and grass floor before the convent gate, Alexander Blackwood, Duke of Ravensworth, knelt, and he wept. "Forgive me," Alexander said, his voice broken, unrecognizable. "Helena, please forgive me." She looked at him as if she were seeing a ghost. The cold, distant Duke, who never showed emotion, was on his knees on the ground, his clothes muddy from the ride, tears streaming down his face without shame. "Alexander, get up. You do not need to—" "I do," he interrupted, his voice desperate. "I do because I have failed you in every possible way. I do because I was a coward. I do because I let you think you were less than you are." Helena sat down on the bench, her legs trembling. She could not trust her own voice. Alexander lifted his face, and what she saw there made her heart stop. Absolute pain, deep remorse, and something more. Something she did not dare to name. "When Isabel died," he began, his voice hoarse, "I died too. Not physically, but emotionally. I locked my heart with an iron padlock, threw away the key, and swore never to feel again. Not to honor her, out of cowardice, out of an absolute fear of loving again and losing." A pause, an uneven breath. "Then you arrived. And I did not know how to handle it, how to respond. You were everything Isabel was not. Quiet where she was radiant, hesitant where she was confident, humble where she was. Perfect, and I thought that meant you were less. But I was wrong. He moved closer, still on his knees, taking Helena's hands in his, large, calloused, trembling. You were not less. You were different. And different is not a deficiency. It is diversity. It is a new possibility. It is a second dawn when I thought there would only be night. Helena began to cry. She could not help it. I kept my distance, Alexander continued. I pretended it was just a practical arrangement. I wrote secret notes because I could not speak to you in person. I defended you publicly, but denied my feelings privately. And that night on the terrace, those words you heard, you said it was a practical arrangement, Helena whispered, that I was to care for the children, nothing more, that you could never love me as you loved Isabel. I lied. The words fell between them like a stone in a silent lake, ripples spreading infinitely. I lied to my friend because I could not admit the truth. I lied to myself because I was afraid. But the truth, Helena, the truth is that I was falling in love with you, gradually, inexorably, and it terrified me. Why? Her voice broken. Why would that be so terrible? Because, Alexander struggled with the words, because it meant moving on. It meant admitting that Isabel was gone and would not return. It meant opening my heart again and risking the pain. It meant betraying. She would not feel betrayed, Helena said softly. She loved you. She loved the children. She would want you to be happy. I know. Rationally, I know. But the heart is not rational. The heart is foolish, stubborn, cowardly at times. He stood up, pulling Helena to her feet as well, holding her by the shoulders, staring into her eyes. Helena, when you left today, when I read that letter, I felt as if the ground disappeared from under my feet. Charlotte crying, saying she had lost another mother. Edward silently destroyed. William, my ever-so-strong son, asking me why I let you go. And I could not answer, because there was no good answer. The truth was, I let you go because I am a fool, because I pretended not to feel what I felt, because I hid behind the ghost of an old love instead of embracing the possibility of a new one. But riding here, 25 miles thinking I could lose you forever, I understood. I love you, Helena. Not as I loved Isabel. That love was incandescent, perfect, a fairy tale. My love for you is different. It is gentle, growing, like a rising tide, inevitable, constant. It is waking up and realizing you are in my thoughts. It is seeing you smile at Charlotte and feeling my heart ache. It is watching you be strong when the world is cruel and feeling an absurd pride. It is knowing that without you, Ravenswood is not a home. It is just a house. Large, empty, dead, Helena sobbed. Alexander pulled her against his chest, holding her as if she might dissolve. I do not know if I can love you as I loved Isabel, he admitted against her hair. But I know I can love you as I love you, differently, deeply, truly, if you will let me, if you will give me a chance to prove it. Helena pulled back just enough to look at him. I never wanted to replace her, she said, her voice choked. I just wanted to matter, to be seen, to be chosen, not just needed. You matter, Alexander said fiercely. To my children, to Ravenswood, to me. You matter more than I can express with words. And you are chosen. I choose you, Helena, not out of need, out of want. Out of love. But what about Isabel? Helena whispered. Her ghost is everywhere. How can I? Isabel's ghost will remain, Alexander said gently. She was part of my life. She gave me my children. I will not erase that, but I will not let it stop me from living either. She is in the portraits, in memory, in the children's hearts. But you are here, alive, real, present, and there is room for both. The heart is not a small room where only one love can fit. It is a mansion with infinite chambers. Isabel has hers. You will have yours, different but equally precious. He took Helena's face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. Come home, Helena. Come back to Ravenswood. Come back to the children. Come back to me, not as a purchased duchess, as a chosen wife, as a beloved companion, as you, unique, special, irreplaceable. Are you sure? Helena whispered. Because I cannot go back and be just a convenience again. I cannot. Never again, Alexander promised. Never again a convenience. Never again a wife on paper only. We will be true to each other, in every sense. He leaned in hesitantly, giving her time to refuse. But Helena did not refuse. She rose on her toes and met his lips. The kiss was gentle, hesitant at first, then deeper. The salty taste of both their tears mixed, indistinguishable. A promise sealed not with words, but with contact, with pure emotion. When they parted, they were both trembling. Come, Alexander said, his voice hoarse. Come home. Helena looked at the convent gate. For a moment, she imagined what it would be like, a quiet, safe life without pain because there would be no love either. The peace of an emotional death. Then she looked at Alexander, at the imperfect, wounded but trying man, trying to love her, trying to be enough. And she understood. A life without love was not life. It was mere existence. "Yes," she said, "I will go home." They rode on Tempest together. Helena in front, Alexander behind, his arms around her, keeping her safe. The mare was exhausted, so they went slowly. But it didn't matter. They had time now. They rode as the sun set, painting the sky pink and gold and purple. And for the first time since they had met, they talked. Really talked. Alexander told her about Isabel, not idealizing but being honest. About how happy they were, but also about the challenges. About how she was socially perfect but privately anxious. About how he had loved her intensely, but also how that love belonged to another time, another life. Helena told him about her parents, about growing up without a mother, about the father who had loved her but was always distant, about the uncle who had sold her without remorse, about how she had thought she would never be loved, that she was destined to always be a second choice. "You are my first choice," Alexander said firmly. Now, forever. First and only. When Ravenswood Hall appeared on the horizon, it was already night. But every window was lit, as if the entire house were waiting, and at the entrance 3 small figures, William, Edward and Charlotte, watching the road. Charlotte saw them first. "Mama Helena," she shouted, running down the road, her arms outstretched. Alexander stopped Tempest. Helena dismounted and was engulfed in childish hugs. Charlotte clinging to her waist, Edward holding her hand, William always more reserved, with a hand on her shoulder but squeezing firmly. "So you came back," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "Papa said he would bring you back. He kept his promise." "Yes," Helena smiled through her tears. "I came back to stay forever if you will have me." "We will have you," said Edward. "We want you. Please do not go again." "Never," Helena promised. "Never again." Alexander dismounted, handed Tempest to a stable boy who had appeared. He approached the family, his family gathered together. And for the first time in 2 years since Isabel had died, he felt something he had thought was lost forever. Hope, happiness, wholeness. It was not the same as it had been. It was different, but different did not mean less. It meant new, rebuilt, rescued from the ashes, and perhaps it was even stronger, because it had been consciously chosen, not happened by chance. That night, Helena slept at Ravenswood for the first time, feeling truly at home, and Alexander, for the first time in 2 years, did not dream of ghosts. He dreamed of the dawn. The days that followed were like learning to walk again. Helena and Alexander moved around each other with care, rediscovering, rebuilding. They started small. Dinners where they talked, really talked. Alexander told her about the estates, the tenants, the House of Lords. Helena spoke of the children, of the books she read, of changes she wanted to make to the house, timidly at first, but with more confidence when she realized he was truly listening. "I was thinking of redecorating the ladies' solar," she said one evening. "The curtains are very dark. I would like something lighter, if you do not mind." Alexander frowned. She waited for the rejection. "It is your house," he said simply. "Redecorate as you wish." Isabel chose those curtains, but that was 10 years ago. Houses should be living, not museums. Helena blinked, surprised. Then she smiled. The most significant symbolic change happened one November morning. Alexander entered her chambers. Still separate, still unconsummated. He was respecting her time, not pressuring her. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. Helena followed him through the corridors until they reached the main ducal chambers. He opened the door. The room was different. The immense portrait of Isabel above the fireplace had been removed. Her clothes, her personal belongings, had all been carefully packed away. "Isabel's portrait has been moved to the ancestral gallery," Alexander explained, "where she belongs, honored as the Duchess she was. Her belongings have been divided among the children, things they can keep, memories. But this room is no longer a shrine. It is just a room." He looked at Helena. "Our room, if you want it. No rush, but I would like that. I would like to have a real wife, in every sense. When you are ready." Helena felt tears burn her eyes. She walked through the room. The curtains had been changed. No longer Isabel's sky blue, but a soft green that Helena had once mentioned she liked. Fresh flowers. Not white roses, but lilies, Helena's favorite, though she had never said so, but Alexander had noticed. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "You are free to change whatever you wish," Alexander said. "But I hope you will want to stay here with me." Helena turned. She looked at him. This man who had been so closed off, so wounded, now trying so hard. "I will stay," she said. "But, Alexander, I have never been with a man. We are married, but you never, and I do not know what to do, how to be." He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her against him. "You do not need to know anything," he said softly. "I will teach you, slowly, gently, no rush, in its own time. When you feel you are ready." And Helena, feeling her heart beat fast but also safe, nodded. Perhaps tonight?" she whispered, blushing. Alexander swallowed hard. He nodded. That night, when the house slept and only candles lit the ducal chamber, Helena and Alexander finally came together. It was not like in the novels, perfect without nervousness. It was hesitant, at times awkward, sweet and tender and real. Alexander was patient, gentle. He treated her as something precious, fragile, but also as a real woman, not a porcelain doll. And when they finally finished, lying intertwined, Helena felt something profound settle. Within her, she was a wife, a real one, not just on paper but in every sense. "I love you," Alexander whispered against her hair. "I love you, Helena, my wife, my duchess, my choice." "I love you too," she replied, and it was true. She loved this imperfect, wounded but trying man. She loved him with a depth that surprised her. Perhaps it was not the incandescent love of firsts, but it was a built-chosen deep love, and it was theirs. November brought rains. Icy rains that drummed against the windows of Ravenswood like impatient fingers, that turned the gardens into a somber landscape, that made the days short and the nights endless. Helena woke up on one of these mornings with a strange feeling, a nausea that made her run to the basin, dizziness, tenderness in her breasts. She called the village physician, Mrs. Morrison, discreetly. The woman examined her, then smiled. "Congratulations, Your Grace. You are with child. About 6 weeks, I would estimate." Helena stood frozen, pregnant. She was carrying Alexander's child, an heir or a daughter, life growing inside her. She should be happy. But what she felt was fear, because Isabel had died bringing Charlotte into the world. Childbed fever, an infection that killed so many women after childbirth. And Alexander would be terrified. She decided not to tell him yet. Just a few more weeks until she was sure, until the most risky period had passed. But she kept the secret precariously, because the morning sickness was hard to hide. It was William who noticed first. "Mama Helena, are you well?" he asked one morning, seeing her pale at breakfast. "Just tired, my dear." But the boy was too observant, too perceptive. Days later, he approached her in the garden. "You are expecting a baby," he said. It was not a question. It was a statement. Helena held her breath. "William, my mother, Isabel. She died bringing Charlotte." "I know. Papa will be terrified." "I know." Silence. Then William took her hand, a surprisingly mature gesture for a 10-year-old boy. "But you are not her. You are strong, stronger than you imagine. And I will pray every day for you to be well, because I cannot lose you. None of us can." Helena hugged him, crying silently. "Thank you, William. Thank you for trusting me." But keeping the secret became impossible when Alexander noticed. He knew her every breath now, every small change. One night, lying in the dark after they had made love, he passed his hand over her abdomen, still flat, no signs. "Helena," he said quietly, "you are pregnant, are you not?" She froze. She wanted to deny it, but she could not lie to him. "Yes," she whispered. She felt his body grow rigid. Then he got out of bed, lit a candle, and turned to her. His face was white. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks. 3. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of desperation. "Why did you not tell me?" "Because I knew you would react this way," Helena said, sitting up, pulling the sheet around her body. "Because I know Isabel died this way, and I know you are terrified." "Terrified?" His voice rose. "Terrified is an understatement. Helena, you could die. Childbed fever, hemorrhage, so many things can go wrong. Or everything could go right," she interrupted firmly. "Women have babies every day. They survive. I will survive. You cannot promise that. And you cannot ask me not to have this baby. It is already here. It already exists. It is your child, my child, ours." Alexander turned away, leaning his hands on the mantelpiece, his head bowed, his shoulders tense. "I cannot lose you," he said, his voice broken. "I cannot, Helena. I already lost Isabel. If I lose you too, it will destroy me completely." Helena got up, approached him, and touched his back. "Then you need to trust," she said softly. "Trust in me. Trust in the doctors. Trust in God. Trust that we will be together on the other side of this with a baby in our arms. And if we are not, Then you will care for our 4 children and remind them that I loved them, all of them. But Alexander, let us not think that way. Let us think positively. Let us have faith. He turned, pulling her against him, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Promise me, Alexander pleaded, his voice hoarse, that you will fight, that you will not give up, that you will do everything in your power to stay with me. I promise, Helena said, looking him in the eyes. I promise I will fight. For you, for our children, for this baby, for us. He kissed her then, desperate and tender at the same time, like a man holding a hope too fragile, one that could shatter in his hands. The following months were as delicate as crystal. Alexander surrounded Helena with obsessive care. He summoned the best doctors from London. Dr. Pembroke visited weekly. Experienced midwives were hired in advance. Nothing was left to chance. Helena tolerated the overprotection with patience. She understood his fear. She saw it in the nights when he would wake up startled, sweating, murmuring Isabel's name, then hers, confused in a nightmare where he lost them both. I am here, she would always whisper, holding him. I am well. We are well. The children reacted with joy mixed with concern. Charlotte was delighted. A little brother, she would jump. Or a little sister. I will teach them everything I know. Edward was more reserved, but Helena caught him reading all the medical books in the library about gestation and childbirth, trying to understand, to prepare. And William! William became a fierce guardian. He would not let Helena carry anything heavy, insisted on accompanying her on her walks, watched her every step like a soldier protecting his queen. You are too young to worry so much, Helena said gently one afternoon. I'm not too young to understand that you are precious, William replied, too serious for his 10 years. To all of us. And I will not lose you. I will not. The love of that boy moved her deeply. He had gone from hostile to protective, from enemy to loyal son. December arrived with snow. Ravenswood was covered in white, silent and magical. The children played in the park, making snowmen while Helena watched from the window, her hand on her belly which was beginning to round. It was on one of those days that the unexpected happened. A visitor arrived at Ravenswood, Lord Edmund Ashford, the uncle who had sold Helena like cattle. He was unrecognizable, as thin as a skeleton, his skin sallow, his hands trembling. The drink had completely destroyed him. He arrived in a rented carriage with no retinue, no dignity. Jameson came to inform them hesitantly. Your Grace, Lord Edmund Ashford requests an audience. He said that he is dying. He wants to speak with Lady Helena. Alexander was furious. Throw him out. That man has no place here. Let him in, Helena said softly. Helena, he sold you. I know, and yet... He is dying, and I do not want to carry hatred. Let me do this. For me. Alexander did not like it, but he nodded. Edmund was led to the library. When Helena entered, he was hunched in an armchair, coughs shaking his frail body. Lady Helena, he managed to say. Your Grace, forgive me. Duchess now. How things have changed. Lord Edmund, she greeted him politely, keeping her distance. You look well, he observed. Happy, pregnant, I see. Ravensworth has given you what I never could. Value. It was not he who gave me value, Helena corrected firmly. I always had it. I just did not see it, and neither did you. Edmund nodded, tired. I came to ask for forgiveness. I know I do not deserve it. I sold you as if you were property. I used you to save myself. I was a coward, greedy, cruel. Yes, Helena agreed. You were. He blinked, surprised by her honesty. But despite everything, she continued, her voice soft, that terrible act brought me to this place. It brought me to my children, my husband, my home. The path was crooked and painful, but it led me to the right destination. So, you forgive me? Helena was silent for a long moment. She thought of all she had suffered, of all the tears shed, of all the loneliness and rejection. Then she thought of Charlotte laughing, of Edward reading beside her, of William calling her Mamma, of Alexander whispering words of love in the dark. Yes, she said finally, I forgive you, not for you, but for me, so that I do not carry the burden of resentment. To be free. Edmund broke down in tears. Tears of relief, shame and gratitude mixed. Helena let him cry. Then she called Jameson. Arrange comfortable lodging for Lord Edmund. Call Dr. Pembroke. Ensure he is treated with dignity in his final days. Your Grace, you do not have to... I do, Helena interrupted, because this is who I choose to be. Someone who loves even when it is not easy. Someone who forgives even when the wound still hurts. Someone who offers grace even when it is not deserved. Edmund died 3 weeks later, in the guest wing of Ravenswood. Helena visited him at the end. held his hand as he passed and whispered words of comfort. And when he finally closed his eyes for the last time, Helena did not feel triumph, just peace. The peace of knowing she had chosen the right path, even when it was the hardest. Alexander, watching from afar, felt his love for Helena grow even more. She was extraordinary. Not for her beauty, not for her perfection, but for the deep, unwavering kindness that persisted even when the world was cruel. "How can you be so strong?" he asked her that night. "I'm not strong," Helena replied. "I just choose love, always, even when it costs. Especially when it costs." And Alexander, kissing her with reverence, thought that perhaps true strength was exactly that, choosing love when hatred would be easier. March of 1818 arrived with fierce winds. Helena was in her 7th month of pregnancy, her belly prominent, the baby's movement strong and constant. Alexander never left her side, his anxiety growing with each passing day. It was on a stormy afternoon that disaster almost struck. William had decided to go to the stables to check on the horses. The storm threatened to damage the roof, and the boy, always too responsible, wanted to ensure the animals were safe. No one saw him leave. Edward was in the library, Charlotte with her new governess Alexander in a meeting with the steward. Helena was resting when she heard the shouts. "The roof! The stable roof is collapsing!" She ran as much as a pregnant woman can run to the window. She saw the scene that chilled her blood. Part of the roof had collapsed and William was inside. She did not think. She just acted. She ran down the stairs, through the torrential rain, and reached the stables where stable hands were desperately trying to remove the debris. "William!" she shouted. "William, where are you?" "Here," a muffled, weak voice. "Mama, I am trapped." Helena plunged into the rubble. She ignored the servant's shouts that it was dangerous, that she could not. She found William under a heavy beam, his face bleeding, his eyes terrified. "It is all right," she said, forcing calm. "I will get you out of here." She helped the stable hands lift the beam, an effort she should not be making, not in her condition. But it did not matter. William was her son, and no power on earth would stop her from saving him. When they finally freed the boy, she pulled him to her, checking his injuries. A cut on his forehead, a possibly fractured arm, but alive. Thank God, alive. It was only when the adrenaline subsided that Helena felt it, a sharp pain in her abdomen, contractions, strong, regular, premature. "No," she whispered, her hand on her belly. "No, not now. It is too soon." Alexander came running, saw William injured, Helena pale, blood on her clothes from William, but it looked like hers, and nearly fainted. "What happened?" "Helena, the baby, I need to lie down," she managed to say. "Alexander, I am having contractions." The panic that seized him was absolute. He shouted orders, Dr. Pembroke, midwives, everyone immediately. He carried Helena inside to the room and laid her down with violently trembling hands. "You are going to be fine," he repeated like a mantra. "You promised. You promised you would be fine." The following hours were a nightmare. The contractions continued, but there was no dilation. Premature labor, but no progression. Dr. Pembroke administered laudanum for the pain, tried every known method to stop the contractions. "The baby is only 7 months," he said grimly. "If it is born now, the chances of survival are slim. And for Lady Helena, the strain could be fatal." "No." Alexander grabbed the doctor's hand, desperate. "You do not understand. It cannot be fatal. It cannot. I need her. My children need her. Do something." "I am doing everything I can, Your Grace." It was 5 days of hell. 5 days where Helena oscillated between painful contractions and periods of deceptive calm. 5 days where Alexander did not eat, did not sleep, just remained by her side, holding her hand, praying as he had never prayed before. The children were terrified. William blamed himself completely. "It is my fault," he cried. "She was hurt because of me. If she dies, she will not die," Edward said fiercely, though his own eyes were red from crying. "She cannot." Charlotte simply fell silent again, a regression to her old trauma. She would sit outside the bedroom door holding her 2 dolls, Isabel and Helena, refusing to leave. It was on the 5th day at dawn that the miracle happened. The contractions stopped. They simply stopped. Dr. Pembroke examined Helena, his expression incredulous. "The uterus has stabilized. I do not know how, I do not know why, but it has stabilized. The baby remains inside, strong, healthy. It is not time yet." Helena opened her eyes, exhausted, pale, but alive. "The baby?" she whispered. "Is fine," Alexander said, his voice broken. "You are fine. You are both fine." And for the first time in 5 days, he breathed. Helena needed absolute rest in the following weeks. Alexander moved completely into her room, sleeping in a chair by the bed. waking at her slightest movement. "You need to rest properly," Helena said. "I will rest when you are safe. Alexander, there are still weeks until the baby is born. You cannot—" "I can," he interrupted firmly. "And I will. It is non-negotiable." She smiled despite her exhaustion. This stubborn, protective man, who loved her with an intensity that sometimes frightened her. The children visited constantly. They brought drawings, flowers, stories. William especially came every day, sitting by the bed holding her hand. "I am sorry," he would always say. "I am sorry for causing this." "William," Helena would say patiently, "it was not your fault. Accidents happen, and I chose to help you because I love you. I would always choose you." Without hesitation, even if it cost you your life, even then. He would cry then and she would hug him, this boy-almost man who carried too much weight for such a young age. April arrived with flowers. The park at Ravenswood exploded in color. Yellow daffodils, red tulips, purple hyacinths. And Helena, confined to her room, watched from the window and dreamed of the day she could walk there again. And she waited for the baby to be born, knowing that when that moment came it would be the final test, the definitive proof of whether fate would allow her to have everything, a husband, children, happiness, or if it would exact a cruel price as it had from Isabel. But for now she was alive, day by day, breath by breath, and it was enough. May brought the gentle warmth that turned England into a green and golden tapestry. Helena was in her 9th month, enormous, uncomfortable but strong, stronger than anyone had imagined. Dr. Pembroke visited on the 1st of May, performed a full examination, then announced, "The baby is in a perfect position. It could be born at any moment. Lady Helena is healthy, prepared. I believe we will have a good outcome." I believe was not a guarantee, but it was hope. Alexander nearly fainted from a mixture of relief and terror. Labor began in the early hours of May 3rd. Helena woke up with a strong contraction and squeezed Alexander's hand. "It is time," she whispered. He leapt out of bed as if he'd been burned. He shouted for everyone, Dr. Pembroke, the midwives, Mrs. Hutchinson. In minutes, the room was full of people preparing, organizing. "For your grace, you must leave," the head midwife said firmly. "No," said Alexander, and Helena said it at the same time. They looked at each other. "I am staying," Alexander said. "I do not care what they say. I will not leave her alone." Helena took his hand, squeezed it. "I am staying too," she smiled, despite the contraction that made her gasp. "I have no choice anyway." The labor lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of pain, effort, fear. Alexander remained by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping sweat from her brow, whispering words of encouragement when she wanted to give up. "You can do it," he would always say. "You are the strongest woman I know. You can do it." And Helena, even in the excruciating pain, thought, "Yes, I can. For him. For our children. For this baby I am bringing into the world." At noon, with the sun streaming through the window in golden rays that seemed like a celestial blessing, the baby was born. A cry, strong, indignant, full of life. "A girl," announced the midwife, lifting the child. "A beautiful baby girl." Helena collapsed back onto the pillows, exhausted but alive. Alive. The baby was cleaned, wrapped, and placed in her arms. Helena looked at her daughter, tiny, perfect, with tufts of dark hair like her father's, and felt a love so overwhelming she thought her heart would explode. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world." Alexander was crying. Tears streamed unashamedly down his face as he looked at his wife and daughter with an expression of absolute adoration. "You did it," he said, his voice choked. "You brought our daughter into the world. You stayed with me. He could not finish. He just kissed Helena, then the baby's forehead reverently. "What shall we name her?" Helena asked. Alexander thought. "Grace," he said softly. "Grace Isabel Helena Blackwood. Grace because it is an unmerited grace that brought you into my life. Isabel in honor of the one who came before. Helena because you are you, unique, irreplaceable." Helena cried then. She cried from happiness, relief, overflowing love. The door opened carefully. 3 heads peeked in. William, Edward, and Charlotte, who had been waiting in the corridor for hours. "Come in," Alexander called. "Come meet your sister." They entered on tiptoe, reverently. They looked at the tiny baby in Helena's arms. "She is so small," Charlotte whispered, amazed. "Oh, you were too once," Helena smiled. "And look how you have grown." William touched the baby's tiny finger. Grace grabbed his finger with surprising strength. "She is strong," he said, surprised. "Like her mother," Alexander replied, looking at Helena with a love that could not be put into words. Edward simply stood there watching, then whispered, "We are a family, a real family, complete." And it was true. In that room, bathed in golden light, with a newborn in the arms of a mother who had survived, a father who loved and siblings who embraced her as a treasure. They were a family, mended, rebuilt, different from what it had been before, but equally valid, equally precious. That night, when only Alexander and Helena remained awake, baby Grace sleeping, in the cradle beside them, he held her hand. "I have something for you," he said. He opened a small velvet box. Inside, a full parure of emeralds, necklace, earrings, bracelet, tiara, old stunning pieces clearly valuable. "These belong to my mother," he explained. "The Ravensworth ducal jewels, passed down from generation to generation. They were never Isabel's. I gave her other jewels. I saved these for the woman who would truly be my duchess, my chosen wife, my soulmate." He placed the necklace around Helena's neck. The emeralds caught the candlelight, sparkling like green fire. "They are yours," Alexander said, "not because you are the duchess, but because you are you, Helena, my wife, my choice." "My love," Helena touched the precious stones, tears streaming. "Alexander, I do not know what to say. Do not say anything, just stay, forever, be mine. As I am yours, always," she promised. Forever. And that night at Ravenswood Hall, all the ghosts were finally laid to rest. Isabel in her honored place in memory, Helena in her earned place in the present, and the future, represented by a peacefully sleeping baby, shone with the golden promise of better days. December 1818. Ravenswood Hall was transformed. Garlands of evergreens decorated the staircases. Candles flickered in every window. The scent of spice and pine filled the air. Christmas was approaching, and for the first time in years the house would celebrate with full joy. Helena was in the ballroom, overseeing preparations for the winter ball, a Ravensworth tradition that Alexander had decided to revive. But this time would be different. It would not be the nervous presentation of an insecure duchess. It would be a celebration. Grace, now 7 months old, chubby and smiling, was in Charlotte's arms, who carried her with a surprising maternal care for a 6-year-old. "Look, Mama, she is laughing," Charlotte said. Helena smiled, approaching to kiss both her daughters. Because Charlotte was as much hers as Grace was, blood did not matter. William ran in, now 11 and growing fast. He carried a letter. "An invitation has arrived, Mama, from Dowager Grandmama Beatrice. She is coming to the ball." Helena and Alexander exchanged glances. Beatrice, the mother-in-law, had been absent for the past few months. Since Grace's birth, she had communicated only through formal, polite but distant letters. "This will be interesting," Alexander murmured. The ball would take place on December 22nd, only 3 days away. Helena checked the final preparations. Flowers, not just white roses, but lilies too, her favorites. Musicians hired. Menu approved. A new gown, emerald-colored silk matching the jewels Alexander had given her, which she now wore with pride. On the morning of the ball, something unexpected happened. Helena found Alexander in the private chapel. He was kneeling before Isabel's memorial, which remained there simple now with an honorable but not dominating inscription. She was about to leave discreetly, but he called her. "Helena, come in." She approached, hesitant. He held out his hand, pulling her to kneel beside him. "I came to say goodbye," Alexander said simply. "Not to her, but to the pain, the guilt, the past that held me captive." He looked at the memorial, his voice soft. "Isabel, you were my first love. You gave me 3 magnificent children. You taught me what it was to love. But now it is time to let you rest. Not in oblivion, but in peace. Your place in my heart remains, but no longer as an open wound, as a gentle scar that reminds but no longer hurts." He turned to Helena. "Helena is my wife now, truly, completely. Not your substitute, not your copy, herself. And I love her with a depth that does not diminish what I felt for you, but exists independently, parallel, unique." He took Helena's hand, intertwined it with his over the memorial. "Thank you, Isabel, for loving them first. Thank you, Helena, for loving them now. You are both part of who I am. And finally I am at peace with that," Helena cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. Because for the first time, she did not feel like she was in competition. She did not feel like a second option. She was an equal beside him, equal in value, even if different in experience. They placed flowers together on the memorial, white roses from Helena, as she always did, honoring the one who came before. And as they left the chapel hand in hand, they both felt it. Something had been released. Something had been healed. Not forgotten, but transformed. The winter ball was spectacular. 300 people, the aristocracy of all England. But this time, when Helena descended the stairs with Alexander, there was no nervousness. There was confidence. She was stunning in the emerald green dress, the jewels sparkling. her hair up in an elegant but not stiff arrangement. She did not look like she was trying to be Isabel. She looked like she was Helena, and that was enough. Society noticed. "The Duchess is radiant," they commented. "So different from last time," others agreed. "There is a light in her now." Lady Pemberton was not present. She had been socially ostracized after the scandal of the previous ball, but other ladies, initially skeptical, approached with genuine greetings. The great surprise of the night was when Dowager Beatrice arrived. The mother-in-law entered as always, haughty, imperious, in a black dress of perpetual mourning. Everyone fell silent, expecting conflict. Beatrice crossed the ballroom directly to Helena. She stopped, stared at her for a long time. Then, to everyone's shock, she curtsied. A small but undeniable curtsy. "Lady Ravensworth," she said, her voice clear, "forgive me for the delay in saying this. You have brought my son back to life. You have brought my grandchildren back to joy. You have given this family what I could not, hope after loss." She took Helena's hands in hers. "You have not replaced my daughter. No one could. But you have created your own place. And that place is precious. You are a worthy duchess, a true wife, a loving mother. And finally, I finally recognize this, with gratitude, with respect, with affection." Helena felt tears burn her eyes. She hugged her mother-in-law, who hesitated, then returned the embrace. "Thank you," Helena whispered, "for trusting me, for accepting me. You have proven yourself 1,000 times over," Beatrice replied. "It was I who was blind, but now I see, and I beg your pardon for my initial cruelty." "Forgiven," Helena said simply. "Always." The ball continued in a celebratory mood. Helena and Alexander opened with a waltz, and this time she did not stumble. She did not falter. She danced with a natural grace, confident in his arms, smiling genuinely. "You are magnificent," Alexander said, looking at her with adoration. "I am loved," Helena corrected, "and that makes me feel magnificent." Later, when the children were brought in, a new tradition Alexander had instituted, Grace in Charlotte's arms, William and Edward in formal uniforms, they all smiled at the hundreds of guests, and the guests saw a family, not perfect, not traditional, but united, loving, real. When Helena momentarily retreated to the terrace for fresh air, Alexander followed her. They stood there looking at the stars over Ravenswood, listening to the distant music from the ballroom. "Do you regret it?" Helena asked suddenly. "Choosing me?" "Moving on?" Alexander pulled her against him, kissing her hair. "I only regret not recognizing sooner what a gift you were. I regret the months I wasted in fear, but regret you? Never, not for a second. And Isabel? Isabel is a beloved past. You are a precious present. And our children, all 5 of them now, are a bright future. I can honor the past while embracing the present. I can love the one who was while loving the one who is. The heart is vast, Helena. I learned that from you." She turned in his arms, looked up at him. "I love you," she said, "with every fiber of my being, and I thank every day for that cold contract that brought me to you." "It was not the contract," Alexander said softly. "It was fate. It was written in the stars. You were always mine. It just took us time to find each other, and it was worth the wait. Every tear, every hardship, every painful moment, it was worth it, because it brought me to you." They kissed then under the December stars, while the music played inside and the world kept spinning. But there, in that moment, it was just them. 2 wounded hearts that found each other, healed each other, loved each other, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Epilogue, spring 1820, 2 years later. The garden at Ravenswood was in full glory. Spring had exploded in color, scent, life. And on the lawn, under a generous sun, the Blackwood family was having a picnic. William, now 13, was home for the Eton holidays. He was telling school stories to Edward, who listened fascinated, eager to follow his brother the next year. Charlotte, 8, was teaching Grace, now 3 years old, chatty and impossible to keep still, how to make flower crowns. The 2 were laughing, petals scattered in their hair. And in Helena's lap, the newest addition to the family, Thomas Henry Blackwood, a 6-month-old baby with his father's grey eyes and a smile that lit up everything. Alexander was lying on the grass, his head in Helena's lap, looking up at the endless blue sky. "It is perfect," he said. "It is chaotic," Helena corrected, laughing as Grace tripped and fell, getting up immediately to continue playing. "Perfectly chaotic," Alexander agreed. "Exactly as it should be." William approached, sat beside them. "Mama," he said, and Helena still felt a warmth in her heart every time he called her that. "I received a letter. I have been accepted as a candidate for Oxford. In 4 years I can study there. "I am so proud," Helena said, touching his face. "Your father is too." "Very," Alexander confirmed. "You will be a great man, William. Greater than I am." "I want to be like you," William said seriously. "Strong when necessary. Kind always. Loyal to family above all else. You taught me that. Both of you did." Helena's eyes filled with tears. "You are already all of that." And more. Charlotte called out, "Mama, come see, we made a crown for you." Helena laughed, passed Thomas to Alexander and stood up. She was crowned with flowers by her daughters, accepting with a dramatic curtsy that made them both giggle. Alexander watched the scene, his heart so full he thought it would burst. His wife, so different from what he had imagined he wanted, but exactly what he needed. His children, Isabel's 3, who loved Helena as a true mother, and Helena's 2, who completed the family. It was not the life he had planned. It was not the story he had imagined. It was better, because it was real, imperfect, human, true. Helena returned, sat beside him, took Thomas back. The whole family was there together under the sun, under the trees that Isabel had planted years ago and that Helena had lovingly tended. "Do you know what I have realized?" Alexander said suddenly. "What?" "I cannot remember the last time I had a nightmare. The last time I woke up terrified, thinking I had lost everything. You healed me, Helena, completely." "We healed each other," she corrected. "Together." "Each other." Alexander looked around, at William discussing chess tactics with Edward, at Charlotte and Grace decorating the grass with daisies, at Thomas falling asleep in Helena's lap. And he understood this was happiness, not dramatic, not a fairy tale, but real, every day, built day after day with small choices of love, patience, forgiveness. "I love you," he said. "Infinitely." "I know," Helena smiled, "and I love you back, with everything I am." They stayed there until the sun began to set, painting the sky pink and gold. Then, as the shadows lengthened and the air grew cool, they returned to the mansion, all together, laughing, talking, alive. And Ravenswood Hall, which had been a cold mausoleum for so long, now pulsed with life, with love, with a future. That night, lying in the dark, their bodies intertwined, Helena whispered, "Alexander, I am happy. So happy that sometimes I'm afraid to wake up and find it was all a dream." "It is not a dream," he replied, holding her tighter. "It is real, and it is forever, I promise." And Helena believed him, because she had learned that sometimes the coldest contracts can grow warm, that crooked paths can lead to the right destinations, that love does not replace, it multiplies, that ghosts can rest in peace while the living celebrate, that to be chosen is more valuable than to be perfect, and that she, Lady Helena Ashford Blackwood, Duchess of Ravensworth, was all of that and more. She was loved. She was enough. She was home.